DCP Player free. Get it now from digital.net.au.
So we're starting to move down that path with bringing new technologies in. And Chris, in his keynote, brought up the issue of business models. Business models drive these things and drive the technologies that we actually see in the cinema. So where do we see this evolving? We have this whole new layer, this whole new investment of digital cinema projectors, and they're not bright enough for 3D. To get them brighter means more investment, newer things. Do we stop there? Do we keep going with this? And do we need to take a big leap forward, or do we need to take small leaps?
It's an interesting question. I don't have an answer to, but it's a good point. I mean, you know, digital cinema just started in 2000, and now we're saying it's pretty ubiquitous now in 2014. And prior to that, exhibitors would buy a film projector, and it would be good for 25, 30 years with reasonable maintenance. And now these laser projectors look spectacular. And clearly they're going to present a better way to present 3D movies than current xenon landmarks projectors. But now to impose upon the exhibitors, okay, it's time to reinvest on your plant equipment again already?
I think the question of whether the economics of a theater, can afford going forward with yet another generation of technology is going to be tough. Right? I mean, I think you're seeing it a little bit, though. I mean, maybe we'll see a bifurcation of the theaters. The way that IMAX at some level is a bifurcation of the theater experience, and now you have Atmos for the bifurcation of the theater experience, and maybe that's just going to continue. You're going to have the higher, the higher quality theater, and you're going to have the medium quality theater, and those are going to end up with expanding, and you're going to see that probably more. The 1% theater thing. And you're already seeing it already with the ones where you're paying extra to have the seat that you wanted, at the time you want. So.
Well, I think that raises the question of, as we look at the increasing the creative palette that we talked about at the beginning of this session, are any of those dimensions actually going to allow the exhibitor to charge more for the ticket, or will the customers be willing to pay more for higher dynamic range or for increased color gamut? And I think the answer is probably not. It's theater environment issues, or it's.
But people are paying more for an IMAX experience. They are paying more for 3D experience. So they already chosen two that they're willing to pay more for.
That's right, but that's a differentiated large format situation. I mean, IMAX has a really strong brand, strong expectation of seeing a higher performance at the theater, and IMAX delivers that. You can pay me later. And thank you.
Right, but we're at the early days of high dynamic range or high frame rate and stuff like that. There might be a package of those together that might make people willing to pay.
Honey, what are the theaters tonight? I don't know, honey. There's this Indian one. That's not in high dynamic range. Oh, yeah, but it's what's it? I know they ask how it's rated on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sorry, they don't. They want to know the reviews. They don't care whether it's high dynamic range or.
No, but you choose the movie, but then you choose the theater. So I mean, people choose the movie, and then they say, "Oh, where's that playing?" And many times,
I agree.
Right, and then they go, "Oh, it's playing that on IMAX, or it's playing at a theater that you can get reserved seating." And I'd say that doesn't mention.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's playing at 6:30, and that's when I'm here.
One thing I think we need to remember, CineTechGeek's brought out standards, and it's 14-foot lamberts for a 2D movie, and we all have to work together in this community. IMAX can't sustain the whole industry, but if you went to see 2D movies at 14-foot lamberts in your local theater, you know how many times it's really at 14-foot lamberts? Not very many times. And I think you'd see an increase in people going to movies if they're projected properly. And I think if they're going to pay more, we're going to get more people in. I think higher dynamic range, higher brightness, increased color palette will just be even better for the audience. They'll eventually understand that, because you're right, TV presentations are getting pretty good, so we've got to work together to at least get the standards we have now, and IMAX does that. Our standard is actually 22, so we're 60% brighter, but I see many regular theaters I go into, they're nowhere near 14.
The other thing you have to do, and I think the NATO's trying to figure this out, is the theater's empty, Monday through Thursday, right? And so it's an empty box. And given that they're in the real estate rental business, if it's going to be dynamic pricing that's going to change, drag people out, I don't know. There are going to be some experience that are going to happen in order to sustain the model. And I think one of them is filling the theater during the week.
I'm going to stay out of this one.
I always felt that with the outside of digital cinema is it's so much cheaper to deliver content to the theater. There are opportunities when there's, if there's just no one in the theaters on Monday and Tuesday nights especially. Is that a night that you can air some classic? When people go see episode 4 of Star Wars on that night and show them in the theater, or Casablanca, or there's the complexities are how they collect box office. That when I talked to much Jeff Goldstein about Warner Bros., but that was one of the barriers, how they attribute the box office.
We need to fill that with those time frames with Troll 2 and also The Room. I think those things are great. For those that know those.